in preparation for The Shape of Water, which is, I heard, coming out this Friday. I am not exactly sure. I'm not sure if my local theater is going to be showing it on Friday. I hope it does, but I've heard it is. Well, we'll have to see. But whatever the case, so yeah, since Guillermo del Toro is directing The Shape of Water, I figured I might as well go back to his past movie that I think is probably one of the greatest films ever made, Pan's Labyrinth. In many ways, it was probably a miracle that Pan's Labyrinth was such a huge success, because this movie made $83 million worldwide off of a $19 million budget. And why do I say it was a miracle that it was even a success in the first place? Well, you really have to look back into the 2000s. Unless you were Lord of the Rings, Pirates of the Caribbean, or Harry Potter, your fantasy film is probably not gonna be that successful. So not only did Pan's Labyrinth have to jump the fantasy genre hurdle, but it also had to jump the foreign language movie hurdle. So knowing that American audiences usually don't like watching movies with subtitles, the fact that it made $37 million domestically is just blows my mind. And well deserving too, because Pan's Labyrinth, like I said, I think is one of the greatest movies ever made. This movie is basically art in movie form. There are so many shots in this movie and so many concepts that are just so artistic. Like, you could put a lot of these shots on a painting and it would look amazing. Hell, I'd probably frame some of these shots if I could, because it's just dripping with imagination. And I have no idea where Guillermo del Toro came up with the idea for this movie, because it's just so imaginative. There are just so many really good ideas and creatures and designs that really make me wonder how he was able to do this. Now, in case you're wondering, Pan's Labyrinth is not a remake of the 80s movie Labyrinth starring David Bowie. It's not a remake of that movie. This movie is completely different. Pan's Labyrinth is about a girl who has a baby brother and then decides to go into a fantasy world. Wait. I mean, yeah, jokes aside, besides the fact that this sounds a little bit like the original Labyrinth, when you look at Pan's Labyrinth, it is a completely different story. It's very different tonally. The different plot elements are different. It has a completely different vibe going around. This is not a remake of the original Labyrinth. Pan's Labyrinth is clearly an original film all on its own. And one thing I really gotta give this movie praise for is its makeup effects. These are some of the greatest makeup effects ever put to screen. Because when you look at the Fawn or the Pale Man, both of which were actually played by Doug Jones, there's barely any CGI going on. Like what you're seeing is probably really actually there. In fact, the funny thing about the Fawn in this movie, he's actually a conglomeration of so many different kinds of effects. Because you have a lot of makeup effects going around, like his hands, his mouth and whatnot. But there's also a lot of practical stuff going around with his face, because they actually added animatronics to the ears so that they could twitch. And in fact, the top half of his face is actually a mask so that they could have those eyelids move. That is really cool. Obviously, I'm not surprised that Pan's Labyrinth won the Oscar for Best Makeup that year. That is just astounding. In fact, maybe I think it should have even gotten a consideration for Best Visual Effects. Because, yeah, there's CGI in this movie, but that's not really why I would nominate it. I mean, like I said, just look at the Fawn alone. As I said before, there are so many different visual effects going on. The makeup effects, the practical puppetry, even the legs, for the most part, are actually real. And how'd they do that? Well, Doug Jones was on green stilts, so that he could appear much bigger than the little girl. But in post-production, they green screened his real legs out so that all you see are the Fawn's legs. That is really, really good. Like I said, I'm surprised this didn't get nominated for an Oscar for Best Visual Effects. Because, yeah, is it as big as, some of the blockbusters these days? No, but it legitimately fooled the eye. A lot of people probably didn't even notice that. And the production, designing, and cinematography are also very much deserving of praise, considering they also won the Oscars too. And Pan's Labyrinth probably has one of the greatest pieces of music ever composed. After watching this video, look up the song Pan's Labyrinth Lullaby. Like, it is just so good. It is just, it's so emotionally investing. And that's another thing about this movie. This movie is so emotional, especially when it gets to the end. I'm not going to say what happens at the end, don't worry. But I was in tears. This movie is just so tragic and beautiful at the same time. I don't know if that was one of the themes in this movie, like trying to find the beauty within tragedy. In fact, that's one thing about Pan's Labyrinth that I've still yet to figure out. What is the hidden meaning behind Pan's Labyrinth? Because I have no idea if there's a hidden meaning. Like, for all I know, it could just be this little girl going on a weird fantasy adventure while also trying to cope with the fact that her mother is having a baby and her father-in-law is kind of a dick. But for all I know, there probably are other themes in this movie. I just don't know. And that's the great thing. I discover so much more about Pan's Labyrinth every time I watch it. Every time I watch this movie, things become even more clear than the last viewing. I really cannot stress this enough. Pan's Labyrinth, in my opinion, is one of the greatest films ever made. Definitely in the top 10 somewhere. And of course, I'm giving Pan's Labyrinth a 10 out of 10. So, what did you think of Pan's Labyrinth? Let me know down in the comments below what you think. Thank you so much for watching. Give this video a like, share the video so we can get the channel circulated, and if you want to see more, click this.